The gunshot echoed through the valley like thunder, sending a flock of startled birds into the dusky sky. Zara Bennett crouched behind a fallen log, her hands trembling as she reloaded her father's old revolver. 3 men on horseback circled the abandoned cabin she'd claimed as shelter, their jeers and threats slicing through the mountain air like knives. "Come on out, pretty thing," one called, his voice slurred with whiskey. "We just want to talk," laughter followed, ugly and threatening. Zara's breath came in shallow gasps. She'd fled St. Louis after her father's death, hoping the Colorado Territory of 1876 would offer the fresh start she desperately needed. Instead, she found lawlessness and danger at every turn. A horse whinnied nearby. Too close. She fired blindly, the recoil nearly knocking her over. "Well, ain't you full of surprises?" The voice was different, closer, calmer, not one of her pursuers. Zara spun around, aiming the gun at the source of the voice. A man stood there, tall and broad-shouldered, hands raised slightly in surrender. Unlike the others, he wasn't leering. His expression was serious but not threatening. "Easy now," he said softly. "I'm not with them." "Stay back," Zara warned, the gun wavering in her grip. The stranger nodded slowly. "Name's Reed Porter. I heard the commotion from the trail, thought someone might need help." His eyes flicked to the cabin and back to her. "Seems I was right." A shout from one of the men broke the moment. "We know you're in there." "We're gonna burn you out if we have to," Reed's expression hardened. "I count 3 of them, drunk by the sound of it." He looked at Zara. "You got a horse," she shook her head. "They spooked him. Then you'll ride with me." He moved slowly, telegraphing his movements. "We need to draw them away from the cabin." Zara kept the gun trained on him. "How do I know you're any better than them?" Something flickered in Reed's eyes, understanding, perhaps. "You don't, but right now I'm offering help against 3 men who clearly mean you harm." He gestured to the silver badge partially hidden by his worn leather vest. "I'm the deputy from Silver Creek." The sound of breaking glass and whooping laughter came from the cabin. One of the men had thrown a bottle through a window. "They're going to set it on fire," Reed said urgently. "It's now or never, madam." Zara lowered the gun slightly. "I'm afraid of men," she admitted, her voice barely audible. Reed's expression softened. "Then I'll teach you gentle ain't weak." He extended his hand. "But first, we need to get out of here alive." After a heartbeat's hesitation, Zara took his hand. Reed led her through the underbrush to where his horse was tethered, a powerful buckskin that stamped impatiently. Without ceremony, he helped her into the saddle and swung up behind her. "Hold tight," he murmured, and then they were off, tearing through the forest away from the cabin. Shouts erupted behind them as the men spotted their escape. Gunshots followed, bullets splintering tree bark around them. Reed leaned forward, urging the horse faster, one arm securely around Zara's waist. They rode hard until the sounds of pursuit faded, then slowed to a canter when they reached a small stream. Reed guided the horse into the water, following its course for nearly half a mile before emerging on rocky ground that would leave minimal tracks. "We should be safe for now," he said finally, drawing the horse to a halt in a small clearing. "They won't be able to follow our trail easily." Zara slid from the saddle, legs shaky beneath her. The adrenaline that had kept her going was ebbing, leaving exhaustion in its wake. "Thank you," she said, wrapping her arms around herself. The evening was turning cold. Reed dismounted and removed his coat, offering it to her without comment. She hesitated before taking it, draping it around her shoulders. "Who were they?" Reed asked, leading his horse to a patch of grass. "I don't know. They showed up this morning, said they wanted to welcome me to the territory." Zara's voice turned bitter. "I made it clear they weren't welcome." "They left but came back at sundown." Reed nodded grimly. "Probably the Harker boys and their cousin. They've been causing trouble all through these parts." He began gathering wood for a fire. "You mentioned you're afraid of men. Can't say I blame you after that." Zara watched him work, his movements precise and deliberate. "It's not just them," she admitted. "My father." She paused, struggling with how much to reveal. "He wasn't a kind man. He taught me that men take what they want and a woman's job is to endure it." Reed said nothing for a moment, focusing on starting the fire. When flames finally flickered to life, he sat back on his heels. "Your father was wrong," he said simply. "A real man protects, respects. Anything less ain't a man at all." Zara's laugh held no humor. That's a nice sentiment, Deputy Porter, but not one I've found to be true. Reed, he corrected gently, and I'm sorry for that. He looked up at her. Where were you headed before those men interrupted your plans, Silver Creek, actually? I have a letter of introduction to the schoolmistress there. I'm hoping to find work as her assistant. Zara hesitated. My father was a teacher before the drinking took over. Reed nodded. Miss Winters is a good woman, strict but fair. He added more wood to the fire. We can head into town tomorrow. It's about half a day's ride from here. Zara sat on a fallen log, pulling Reed's coat tighter around her. I left everything behind, my clothes, my books. We can circle back once we're sure those men have moved on, Reed promised. Or I can send some of the men from town to collect your things. Silence fell between them, broken only by the crackling fire and night sounds of the forest. Reed set about making a simple camp, laying out a bedroll and offering it to Zara. When she looked at him questioningly, he simply shrugged. I'll keep watch, he said, settling himself against a tree trunk, rifle across his knees. You're not what I expected, Zara said after a while. Reed's mouth quirked in a half-smile. What did you expect? I don't know, someone rougher, less. She gestured vaguely. Gentle, he supplied. Yes, she met his gaze across the fire. I was always told gentle men are weak men. Reed considered this. Strength isn't about how much damage you can do, it's about how much you can control. He ran a hand over his stubbled jaw. Any fool can lash out in anger. Takes real strength to be gentle when the world's trying to make you hard. Zara studied him in the firelight, seeing the lines of exhaustion around his eyes, the calluses on his hands, the way he remained alert even as they talked. How did you become a deputy? Found myself on the wrong side of the law as a young man, Reed admitted. The sheriff of Silver Creek gave me a choice, jail or work. I chose work, eventually earned his trust, then the badge. And now you save women from bandits. Reed's laugh was soft. Not a regular occurrence, thankfully. He added a stick to the fire. Get some rest, Miss Bennett. Tomorrow will be a long day. Zara, she corrected. And thank you, Reed, for everything. She settled onto the bedroll, wrapped in his coat, and despite her usual wariness, sleep found her quickly. The morning dawned clear and cool. Zara woke to the smell of coffee and sat up to find Reed crouched by a small fire, pouring the dark liquid into a tin cup. Hope you like it strong, he said, offering her the cup. Only way I know how to make it. Zara accepted it gratefully, wincing slightly at the bitter taste but appreciating the warmth. How far is it to Silver Creek? 4, maybe 5 hours if we take it easy. Reed studied her. How are you feeling? Better than I expected, Zara admitted. She handed back his coat. Thank you for lending me this. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, and Zara was surprised by the lack of fear she felt at the contact. Something about Reed's calm demeanor put her at ease in a way she couldn't recall experiencing with a man before. They broke camp quickly and set off, Zara again riding in front of Reed. The terrain was rugged but beautiful, with towering pines and occasional breathtaking views of distant mountains. Reed pointed out landmarks as they rode, sharing bits of local history and lore. That peak there is where an old prospector claims to have seen a mountain lion big as a horse, he said, gesturing toward a craggy summit. Course, he'd been living alone up there for 15 years, so folks take his stories with a grain of salt. Zara found herself smiling, something she hadn't done much lately. Do you believe him? Reed shrugged, the movement she felt rather than saw. I believe he believes it. Sometimes that's enough. They stopped at midday by a clear stream to rest the horse and eat the jerky and hardtack Reed had in his saddlebags. Sitting on a sun-warmed rock, Zara found herself studying her companion. In the daylight, she could see he was younger than she'd initially thought, perhaps 30, with lines around his eyes that spoke of squinting into the sun rather than age. What brought you out to my cabin yesterday? She asked suddenly. Reed glanced up from adjusting his horse's saddle. I patrol the outlying areas every few days, spotted the smoke from your chimney, thought I'd check if everything was all right. His expression turned wry. Good thing I did. Yes, Zara agreed softly. A very good thing. They continued their journey, the landscape gradually changing as they descended into a wide valley. By mid-afternoon, the first buildings of Silver Creek came into view: a church steeple, a water tower, the sprawling structure of what Reed identified as the town's sawmill. "It's bigger than I expected," Zara remarked, taking in the bustling main street as they rode in. "Growing fast," Reed agreed. "The railroad's coming through next year, town's already preparing for it." People called greetings to Reed as they passed, eyeing Zara with curious but not unfriendly looks. He acknowledged them with nods and occasional words, but kept their pace steady toward a white painted building set slightly apart from the others. "The schoolhouse," he explained. "Miss Winters should be finishing up for the day." Indeed, as they approached, children began spilling from the doorway, their voices high and excited after a day of lessons. Reed dismounted and helped Zara down, his hands strong but careful at her waist. "I'll introduce you," he offered, tying his horse to the hitching post. The schoolmistress proved to be a diminutive woman with steel gray hair and bright, intelligent eyes. She welcomed Zara warmly after Reed explained the situation, a simplified version that mentioned trouble with local ruffians but spared the more frightening details. "We've been hoping for an assistant teacher," Miss Winters said, ushering Zara inside. "The town's growing and there are too many children for one teacher to manage properly." She glanced at Reed. "Thank you for bringing her safely, Deputy." Reed tipped his hat. "Just doing my job, madam." His eyes met Zara's briefly. "I'll check on you tomorrow, see how you're settling in." Zara felt an unexpected pang at his departure. "Thank you again, Reed." He nodded and was gone, leaving Zara in Miss Winters' capable hands. The next days passed in a flurry of activity. Miss Winters had a small room above the schoolhouse that she offered to Zara, and the townswomen quickly rallied to provide her with clothes and necessities to replace what she'd left behind. Reed arranged for 2 of the town's men to retrieve her belongings from the cabin, reporting with satisfaction that the Harker boys had moved on, likely heading north toward Wyoming territory. Zara found she enjoyed teaching, drawing on memories of observing her father in his better days. The children were eager learners, and Miss Winters proved to be a kind mentor despite her stern appearance. Reed visited regularly, first under the pretense of official business, then with increasingly transparent excuses. Sometimes he brought her small gifts, wildflowers, a book from his personal collection, once a piece of ribbon he claimed seemed like your color. Zara found herself looking forward to his visits, her initial wariness gradually replaced by genuine pleasure in his company. One evening, a month after her arrival in Silver Creek, Reed invited her to join him for supper at the town's hotel restaurant. It was the closest thing to formal dining the town offered, and Zara understood it as the significant gesture it was. "I should warn you," Reed said as they walked together down the main street, "folks will talk." Zara smoothed the front of her borrowed dress, a simple blue cotton that Mrs. Miller, the doctor's wife, had insisted suited her perfectly. "What will they say?" Reed's smile was crooked. "That the deputy's sweet on the new schoolteacher. That maybe Silver Creek's most confirmed bachelor has finally met his match." Zara felt heat rise in her cheeks. "And would they be wrong?" Reed stopped walking, turning to face her directly. The evening light caught in his eyes, turning them from brown to amber. "No," he said simply, "they would not be wrong." Her heart stuttered in her chest. "Reed, You don't have to say anything," he assured her quickly. "I know you've been hurt. I know trust doesn't come easy for you." "I'm not asking for anything, Zara, just the pleasure of your company." She studied his face, open, honest, patient. "You've never pushed," she said wonderingly. "All this time, you've never once made me feel afraid." "I told you before," he said softly. "Gentle ain't weak." Impulsively, Zara reached for his hand, threading her fingers through his. It was the first time she had initiated contact between them, and Reed's surprise and pleasure were evident. "I'm beginning to believe you," she said. Supper was a simple but pleasant affair. The hotel's cook had prepared roast beef with potatoes and carrots, and there was even apple pie for dessert. Reed was a courteous dining companion, attentive without hovering, and Zara found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't thought possible in a man's presence. They talked of books they'd read, places they'd seen or hoped to see someday. Reed spoke of growing up in Pennsylvania, the son of a blacksmith who had dreamed of wider horizons. "When he died, I headed west," Reed said, turning his coffee cup in his hands, "looking for something. Didn't know what until I found this place. And now, Zara asked, have you found it? His eyes met hers across the table, getting closer every day. After dinner, they walked through the town as dusk settled. Reed kept a respectful distance, but Zara found herself drifting closer to him as they strolled. Would you tell me about your father? Reed asked gently. Only if you want to, of course. Zara was quiet for a long moment. He wasn't always cruel, she said finally. When my mother was alive, he was different. After she died, he started drinking, and the drinking changed him. She swallowed hard. He never hit me, but his words, they could cut deeper than any blow. Reed nodded, understanding in his eyes. Words leave scars all their own. Yes. Zara wrapped her arms around herself, a familiar gesture of self-protection. He told me I was worthless, that no man would ever want me except for one thing, and I saw how he treated women, how his friends treated women. I believed him. Reed's hands clenched briefly at his sides. I'm sorry you had to endure that. When he died, Zara's voice caught. Part of me felt relieved. Isn't that terrible, to feel relief at your own father's death? No, Reed said firmly. It's human. You weren't relieved he died, you were relieved the pain stopped. They had reached the schoolhouse. Zara paused at the steps, turning to face Reed in the gathering darkness. Thank you for tonight, she said softly. May I call on you again? He asked, his voice equally quiet. Zara nodded. I'd like that. Reed hesitated, then slowly raised his hand to her face, giving her plenty of time to move away if she wished. When she didn't, his fingers brushed her cheek with exquisite gentleness. Good night, Zara Bennett. Good night, Reed Porter. She watched him walk away, a strange new feeling fluttering in her chest, something like hope. The summer months passed in a gentle rhythm of school days and evenings spent in Reed's company. They rode together on weekends, exploring the countryside around Silver Creek. Reed taught Zara to fish in the clear mountain streams, laughing at her initial squeamishness about baiting hooks but praising her patience. Fishing's all about waiting, he told her as they sat side by side on a fallen log, lines trailing in the water. Most folks give up too soon. Zara glanced at him. Is that what you're doing with me? Waiting? Reed's smile was warm. I'd wait forever if that's what you needed. What if I don't know what I need? She asked, her voice barely audible over the rushing water. Reed set his fishing rod aside and turned to face her fully. Then we figure it out together. No rush, no pressure. Zara studied him, this man who had become so important to her so quickly. You make me feel safe, she admitted. I've never had that with anyone before, not since my mother died. Safety's a good place to start, Reed said. His hand found hers, calloused fingers curling around her smaller ones. The rest can follow in its own time. The moment was broken by a sharp tug on Zara's fishing line. Reed helped her reel in a plump rainbow trout, his hands guiding hers on the rod, his chest warm against her back. The physical closeness that once would have terrified her now felt right, natural. That evening, Reed built a fire by the stream and showed her how to cook their catch, wrapped in leaves with wild herbs he gathered from the riverbank. They ate with their fingers, the fish flaky and delicious, and watched the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. My mother used to say that stars are windows, Zara said, leaning back on her elbows, that our loved ones who have passed on look down through them to check on us. Reed stretched out beside her, careful to maintain a respectful distance. Do you believe that? I'd like to. Zara turned her head to look at him. What about you? Do you believe in anything like that? Reed was quiet for a moment. I believe there's more to this world than what we can see or touch, he said finally. Whether that's God or something else, I couldn't say for certain, but I've felt moments, times when something bigger than me seemed to be at work. Like what? His eyes found hers in the firelight. Like the day I found you, I wasn't supposed to be patrolling that area, changed my route on a feeling. He shrugged slightly. Call it instinct, call it providence. Either way, I'm grateful for it. Zara's breath caught. Slowly, deliberately, she moved closer to him until their shoulders touched. So am I. Reed's arm came around her, and she rested her head against his shoulder, watching the stars with a sense of peace she'd almost forgotten could exist. As autumn approached, bringing cooler days and hints of color to the aspens in the hills, Zara found herself thinking about the future. Miss Winters had offered her a permanent position as the school's second teacher, with a small salary that would allow her to rent a room of her own in town. The prospect of staying in Silver Creek filled her with quiet joy, a feeling inextricably linked to the man who had come to mean so much to her. One crisp Saturday morning, Reed invited her on a ride to a place he wanted to show her. They set out early, Zara now comfortable enough to ride her own horse, a gentle mare Reed had helped her select from the town's livery. They rode for nearly 2 hours, climbing into the foothills above the town, until Reed led them into a small, hidden valley. A crystal-clear lake filled its center, reflecting the surrounding mountains like a perfect mirror. At the near end of the lake stood a cabin smaller than the one where they'd first met, but sturdy and well-maintained. "It's beautiful," Zara breathed, dismounting to stand at the lake's edge. "Who lives here?" Reed joined her, looking somewhat nervous for the first time since she'd known him. "No one at the moment. I built it a few years back, a place to get away from town sometimes." Zara looked at him in surprise. "You built this yourself," he nodded, ducking his head slightly. "Took me 3 summers, working when I could get away from my duties. It's not much, but—" "It's wonderful," Zara said sincerely. "May I see inside?" Reed led her to the cabin, opening the door with an almost shy gesture. The interior was simple but thoughtfully arranged: a stone fireplace, a sturdy table with 2 chairs, shelves filled with books, and a bed tucked into the corner, covered with a colorful quilt. "My mother made that," Reed said, noticing her admiring the quilt. "Sent it to me before she passed." "Said a home needs a woman's touch, even if it's just one thing." Zara ran her fingers over the intricate stitching. She was right. Reed cleared his throat. "Zara, I brought you here because—" He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "I've been thinking about the future. My future." "Our future, if you'll allow me to say that." Zara's heart began to race. "Reed," he took her hands in his expression earnest. "I love you, Zara Bennett. I think I have since the moment you told me you were afraid of men but still found the courage to trust me enough to escape those bandits." Tears pricked at Zara's eyes. "Reed, you don't have to say it back," he assured her quickly. "I know your past makes trust difficult, love even more so, but I wanted you to know where I stand." He glanced around the cabin. "I built this place dreaming of sharing it with someone someday. With you, if you'll have me." Zara felt as though her heart might burst from her chest. The man before her had shown her nothing but patience, respect, and kindness from the moment they met. He had never pushed, never demanded, never made her feel less than his equal. "When I said I was afraid of men," she began slowly, "I meant I was afraid of what I thought all men were: cruel, selfish, demanding." She squeezed his hands. "You've shown me that's not true. You've taught me that gentle isn't weak, it's the strongest thing there is." Reed's eyes shone with hope. "Does that mean—" "It means I love you too," Zara said, the words feeling both terrifying and perfectly right. "It means I want that future you spoke of, with you." The smile that broke across Reed's face was like sunrise. Slowly, telegraphing his movements as he always did, he drew her into his arms. When their lips met, it was gentle, but there was nothing weak about the emotions coursing between them. They were married the following spring, with the whole town turning out to celebrate. Miss Winters cried openly during the ceremony, later confiding to Zara that she'd never seen 2 people better suited for each other. The schoolchildren presented them with a hand-drawn book of well wishes, and even the gruffest of the townsmen seemed moved by the deputy's obvious happiness. They divided their time between the town, where both continued their work, Reed as deputy, eventually becoming sheriff when the old man retired, and Zara as a beloved teacher, and their cabin by the lake. Over the years, they added to it another room, a larger porch, a garden where Zara grew vegetables and flowers side by side. Their first child, a daughter with her mother's dark hair and her father's gentle eyes, was born 2 years after their wedding. A son followed 3 years later. Both children grew up knowing only love and respect from their father, watching daily as he treated their mother with unwavering kindness and regard. Sometimes, when the children were asleep and they sat together on their porch watching the stars reflect on the lake's surface, Zara would think back to the frightened woman she had been, hiding behind a fallen log with a gun she barely knew how to use. "What are you thinking about?" Reed would ask, always attentive to her moods even after years together. And Zara would smile, leaning her head against the shoulder of the man who had taught her that strength and gentleness were not opposites but companions. I'm thinking that I'm not afraid anymore. Reed would draw her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. Good, he'd murmur. That's all I ever wanted for you. But they both knew he had given her far more than freedom from fear. He had shown her that love, when true and patient, could heal even the deepest wounds. That a man's strength lay not in dominance, but in his capacity for gentleness. That two souls, both carrying their own scars, could find in each other not just safety but joy. And in the wild landscape that had once seemed so threatening, Zara Bennett Porter had found something she'd never expected. A home, a family, and a love that proved every day that gentle wasn't weak, it was the strongest force of all.